Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. On the previous video, we discussed about HTTP basic authentication and form based authentication. So in this video, we'll explore JWT authentication and we'll see how to add this JWT in Spring Boot project. Without further delay, let's get started. So first, if you see the what is JWT? JWT is a JSON Web Token. So this is the widely used authentication mechanism in web applications. So here is the JWT website. So if you scroll down, so if you see, this is the structure for JWT token. So first one is header. So it is containing algorithm and token type. And second one is the payload. So this payload will contain our information like username and when the token is generated and when the token will get expired and rolled. So all the information will contain payload. And third one is the signature. So this is the format of JWT token. Now we'll see one real-time use case how this JWT token will work in the application level. So if you see this diagram, so let's consider we are trying to log in one e-commerce application. So here we are entering username and password. When I click on the submit button, so it will go with these details like username and password. It will call one authentication service. So from this authentication service, we are configured JWT authentication. So here is the responsibility of JWT to generate the token and also validate the token. So first time when you hit this submit button, so request go to the authentication service. This service will return one token. So this token format is this. So just now we seen in the JWT website. So it is a combination of three parts. One is for header, second one is payload, third one is a signature. So like this, it will return one token. So till now token is generated from the JWT. So we have some another services also. Still we don't have access to retrieve all this information. Okay. So once user is validated, then only we are able to access other services of this e-commerce application. Okay. So once the JWT token is written from the auth service, then again we need to hit the service with this token. This time in the JWT level, we have one more class saying that JWT request filter. Okay, so what this filter will do, this filter will interrupt this request and it will validate this token saying that this token is valid token or not. If the token is valid, then it will allow to access other services of the e-commerce application and it will pull all the data and it will show on the dashboard. Okay, so still here if you see, once the token is validated, it will connect to the user table. In the user table, there is a information like username and password. So those information it will validate. Okay. So this is the flow usually how this JWT will work in the real-time applications. Now we'll create one Spring Boot project with JWT token. So here I am creating the Spring Boot project from Spring Initializer. So here group name Java Codex, artifact name Spring Boot JWT, and package name is com.java codex. And here I'm adding the dependencies. So one dependency is the web and another one is Lombok. And we'll use MySQL database and JPA. So these are the four dependencies I am added from this. And also we need to add one more security. So till now we are not added any JWT related dependencies. So we are added these 5 dependencies will generate this project and import into IntelliJ IDE. So I have loaded this project into IntelliJ IDE. So if you see, I am using Spring Boot version is 3.3.2, and if you see my dependencies, I am using data JPA, starter security, starter web, MySQL connector, and Lomba. So along with that, we need few more dependencies for JWT. So one dependency I have added JSON Web Token, and also we need XML binding, and these two JAXB dependencies are required. So I have added 4 extra libraries in the form.xml file. Okay. So with this, I'm done with the dependencies. Now we'll create project structure for this JWT application. So for this one, we need entity, we need service, we need repository, and we need config, and also we need utility, and filter, finally controller. So here, if you observe my package structure, we are creating config, controller, entity, filter, repository, service, and utility. So I will explain you one by one what is the use of each class. Okay. So first, I will create one entity, that is user entity. Okay. So this is the user entity. So to save our time, so I have added this user entity here. So here I'm using ID, username, password, and one boolean value like enabled either true or false. Okay, this is my user entity. So now we need to add one utility. That utility is JWT util class. So this is the JWT util class is responsible to generate the token. So here is my JWT util. So if you observe this class, I am using one secret and expiration time. So the token expiration time, these two I will pass from the application properties. After that, if you see, here is the generate token. So this is the method. It will generate our JWT token with the username and this expiration time, as well as the algorithm we are using HS256. Okay, with this it will generate token. Again, it is having combination of headers, payload, and signature. So also I kept some logs. Also I will show you step by step which when this generate token method will execute everything. Okay, so this is related to the generate token. So if you come down, so there is a is token expired and validate token. Is token expired, will check that token is expired or not. And validate token, this validated token will execute whenever calling the API with the token. I will show you where we are calling this validate token. So now we have created JWT util. Now we'll create one filter class. So what is the use of this filter? This filter is the responsible to interrupt our request and validate this token. So if you see this class, this is the JWT request filter. So if you don't know the what is the filter, I have already uploaded one video about the filter. You can just go through those videos. So if you see this JWT request filter is extends once for request filter, means this will execute only one time as for the request. Okay, so if you see here, here is the do filter internal. So this is the method. It will execute once the request coming to that our service. So it will interrupt the request and it will start executing this method. If you see in this method, here we are calling the validate token. So validate token we are calling with JWT token with username. So previously we seen in the JWT util, from here this token will be generated with the username. Okay, so here with the username with the token, it will try to validate the token. If the token is valid, then it will allow to access other services from our application. So here is the details like JWT token and the username. It will extract from the header. Okay, authorization header. I will show you when this class will execute. So here also I'm keeping some blocks. If you see when this method will execute, we'll see everything. So now if you see our project, so JWT is ready, JWT request filter is ready. So I have the user. Now we'll try to create user repository first. So right click, new as user repository, implements user repository extends JVA repository. Repository. Okay, so here we are passing user as entity, and so this is my repository. Okay, so what next we need to do? So we need to add one configuration for this. So I have added one configuration. So here security config, I'm using annotation configuration. When we start the Spring Boot application, so it will read this security config, and also it is having two classes, JwtRequestFilter as well as the customer user detail service. So it will automatically create this object for this, and it will register with bin registry. If you see the JwtRequestFilter, so it is using annotation component, so it will create the object for this, and it will register with the bin registry. So if you see the JwtRequestFilter is a filter class, already we discussed about this one. So there is a one more class here using, that is for customer user detail service. If you go with the customer user detail service, so here what it is doing, this is the user repository. Okay, so from the user repository, so it will call our database if the user is exist or not, the user is a valid credential or not, we are checking with this. Okay, so why it is showing, so we need to write this method inside the repository. So I have added this find by username method in the repository. Okay, so this is the customer user details. So before that one, usually we are using user detail service. Now we are using the customer detail service. It is implements user detail service internally. Okay, so from this one we are calling to our user table, and we are getting the user information, and we are validate that username and password. Okay, we'll create a controller. So I am giving the controller like AuthController. So here I am creating AuthController. From this AuthController, we are expecting a request, authentication request. So in the authentication request, it will contain username and password. So for that one, we need to create separate package like request. So in the request, we'll create one class like authentication request, and here we'll create two properties like private string user name, private string password. So whenever first time calling to the authentication service, will call with this data. And the same way we need response also. Once the request process is completed, it will return back to the token. So that token will come with response. So here we'll create one response for that. That is called authentication response. So here response is a token. So here is my package. Here we'll create one more class authentication response, and here it is a private string JWT token. So here is my response. So we can use Lombok here to create an argument constructor and no argument constructor. So in the same way, we need to specify in the request also. So where is my request? Here is the request. Okay, so this is my request. Okay, if we come to AuthController now, so this is authentication response, it will return back, and this is the request. Okay, so now see, so here is the creating token. Here I kept one log. Whenever you are calling the authentication service, this is the slash authenticate. This one we are enabled by default. Okay, once we are calling this API, it will return the token. Then again we need to validate the token. Once the token is valid, then only we are able to access other resources from this API. Okay, so now we'll add some properties in the application.properties. So here I'm adding security. So here I'm adding JWT secret key, and here is the expiration time. So I'm giving 1 hour, and here is my database configuration details. Okay, so let's see this classes one. So first one is the user entity. It is having username, password, and ID will automatically generated. There is a one boolean. It will store either enabled or disabled for that authentication. Okay, next one is JWT util is the first class. It will generate the JWT token. So this is the JWT will perform to generating the token. So token will generate based on the secret key and the expiration time. Okay, so once this token is generated, so we'll hit the API to the auth service. Auth service will generate this token. Then next time JWT request filter. So this will interrupt the request, and it will try to validate the token from do filter internal. Here it will validate the token. Okay, so if the token is valid, then it will go to the database, and it will again validate those user information is correct or not. So those validations we are doing from the once the user also it is valid user, then it will allow to access other APIs from the applications. Okay, so here we'll create one more controller to test. So we'll use like a product controller. So here is my product controller. I will create a public string get product. So like this is a product information. So what it will return? So I will return a simple message, welcome to the Spring JWT session. So this is the just message I'm returning when I call this get product. Okay, so request controller and request mapping. So here I'm using slash product. So here is the get mapping. So I'm not using any kind of code operations, just I'm returning this information. Okay, so first scenario, here I'm enabling with this slash authenticate. Okay, so where we are doing those things, if you come here in the spring we come this security configuration. So if you see here, so this security configuration previously we seen in the HTTP basic authentication override with form based authentication. There we are using this security config. It is the same way. Here we are using the security filter chain. So we are disabling so here we are disabling cross forgery, and so here if you see request matches, so here we are permitting to authenticate. So by default we are enable this slash authenticate API only. Remaining if you're using any other APIs, definitely it will first authenticate, then only we are allowing to access other REST APIs, because here we are using JWT authentication. We are not using form based authentication. Okay, so add filter before, if you see add filter before, we are using JWT request filter. This JWT request filter will call to this interrupt this request object. Okay, now we'll start this application. We'll try to test from Postman. So here is the main class. So I will start this Spring Boot application. So my application is started. So if you see here, create query is executed. With this, user table is generated in my SQL database. Okay. So if you scroll down, so what is the port number it is using? Port number it is using 9898. So 9898. Okay. So now, so if you observe these things in the logs, so found to user detail service B and security filter chain. So from the security config class, it is executed security filter chain, because these are the we are doing annotation configuration of the security configure. So at the time of Spring Boot application starting, it will do the creating bean object and it will register with the bean registry. Okay. So now we'll test this one from the Postman. So I will create new collection for this new. So I'm keeping this name rename. So I will use like JWT, and first request I'm adding. So first request is nothing but post one, because authenticate is the post one. This is the first API. Okay. Authenticate. So what is the URL and the port number we are using? Port number I am using 9898. And if you go to the controller class first, so this is the AuthController. So by default, this authenticate API is enabled. Remaining all APIs not allowed to access. After authentication is done, then only it will access. So remaining what is there? If you see this product controller, I have slash product. Okay. So if you want to access this slash product first, http localhost 9898 slash products. Okay. So this is the get API. If you call this one, so if you see it is written 403. Okay. So it is like unauthorized response. We are not able to access. If you come this logs also, so if you see this logs, so Tomcat started from here. If you see do filter internal is executed. Where is the do filter internal? So if you come to the Spring, if you come to the JWT request filter, so this is the do filter internal. So here it is checking authorization token. So we are not passing any token yet, so it was failed. So not able to access. So first we need to call this authenticate API. So authenticate API is expecting, if you see this controller class, so this is AuthController, this is the authenticate API. It is expecting authentication request with username and password. So we need to pass username. So username I will use test user, and password will use 12345 6. So this test user were not yet created in the database. So let me add this user in the database also. So I will insert some records in the users table. So this is the test dot users. I will run this one. Now if you see this users table and refresh this, so one entry is inserted. Okay, password is password 123, user is test user. So this is the password I have to use my Postman. Okay. So I'm passing username and password with authenticate API. So when you hit this API, so if you see it is generated JWT token. So first one is the header, second one is the payload, third one is the verify signature. So if you want to decode this one, you can just copy this JWT token and you can go to the JWT website, jwt.io, and here you can give this token. If you see here, user is test user. So here is the date when it was created. If you see here 8:54, expiration time is 9:54, means 1 hour valid this token. So here is the HS256 algorithm we are using. Okay, you can able to see the details from the JWT website. Okay, So now come to our code. So now what we need to do, now there is a one more API we are using, right? So that is the product API. Now we can create one more API in the Postman, that is the get one. So instead of authenticate, we can use the products. Okay, now can hit this one. So by default, if you're not passing any authentication token, see how it will work. So I'm not adding any token here. So just body is also empty. Just I'm doing this product. So this is the URI in the product controller. This is the products. Okay. So when I hit this one, see again it is 403 forbidden. Okay. So if you add this token in here, so this is the bearer token, and here you can paste this token and hit this API now. See, now we receive the response like welcome to Spring JWT session. Okay, so this is the response I am getting from this API. Okay, so now once this authentication is done, then only we are able to access other resources from the application. Till now we cannot able to access. So if you see my application properties, this token is given expiration time as 1 hour. So let's see, we'll give expiration time as 1 minute and how it will work. So now if you see this expiration time is 1 minute. Okay, I will restart this application one more time. So application is starting. So now application is started. Okay, so first time we'll generate the token and we'll see what are the classes we'll execute. So I'm using same username and password, and we'll hit that API. Now you see one more JWT token is generated, and if you see these logs, see JWT util generate token is executed, so it is generating the token. Okay, so if you see the more information here, so created token from the controller class AuthController. After that, customer detail service, it will execute it based on the username, it will generate the token. Okay, so I will clear this logs, and now I will copy this token. I will try to pass with this API. Okay, so now time is 1 minute. So we received the response. If you go with again logs, if you see the logs, again it is calling do filter internal. So this is the filter class. It will validate the token from here only. See, again it is called validated token. Once this token is validated, then it will give the response back to our API. See, this token is valid 1 minute. So if you call this API after 1 minute, we will get unauthenticated like 403. We'll get the response. So just wait for 1 minute and we'll try to call one more time. So if you want check this token details, again you can go to the JWT and here you can paste this token. Now if you see expiration 8:57, it is created and expiration time is 8:58. Okay, so we'll come to the Postman and we'll try this. Still it is valid. Just wait. No, it is authenticated. One more token is generated now. Okay, no problem. So new token is generated, right? We can try to hit this is the products. This token is not valid now. If you see now, it is given 403 forbidden. Okay. So if you want to add JWT token mechanism in your Spring Boot application, this is the flow. Okay, so if you go with the Spring configuration, so previously it is extending web security configure adapter. Now it was changed after Spring above 5.0 and Spring Boot 3.0. We need to use this filters, so you just need to remember this one. Okay, I hope this video is helpful for you. Please like, share and subscribe my channel for more content.